Today we're going to be taking this old Medusa painting that I created and updating the face and background to look like this. Stay tuned to find out how I completed this project on Create Kev. Before starting this project off, I want to go over the issues I have with this painting. So basically, the face is jacked. So I finished this painting about a year or two ago, and I definitely have just honed in more skills, had more experience painting faces, and I can see that the tip of the nose and the eyes look tilted back, but everything else is very straight on, and so it just makes that face look very fat and square. So we're gonna go ahead and fix that. I really like how the snakes turned out, except for one of them. But basically, I really like how the gradation on the snakes turned out. Going from that green to blue, purple, and then red is actually very challenging, and I really love how that effect turned out. But I think that blue background really kind of washes those snakes out. I know I wanted to incorporate more of that blue color in, but it just makes everything look very tonal. So we're going to go over that face and background, keeping the elements that I like, but we're just going to modify some of the ones that are not very well done right now. Now, my inspiration for this was actually a clip from Whitney Cummings' podcast when she had Christina Ricci on.
The only advice I've ever given is, and this started back in my 20s when I would go to a photo shoot. They would be like, do not cry and do not get naked on camera. Honey. But not cry because I was like upset. I cried once in a photograph and all these people really liked it. So then after that, every time I would go to a photo shoot for editorial or whatever, they would have me cry. And they were like, eventually people were just like, there's something wrong with you.
Why did you cry the original time?
Because they were like, it'll be a cool photo. And it was. It's a really good picture.
And now that I've got my inspiration, I'm going to throw that in Photoshop so I can start to make my reference photo. So basically, I'm just going to take that picture that I want and manipulate the colors and flip it so that I can put it over my painting so I can see what that's going to look like. I can also go ahead and manipulate the colors for the background so that I can see what's going to work best. And I really liked this deep purple to bring out the accents in the snakes and to really bring that foreground forward, making it stand out. So basically, this is the point of no return. I just gotta rip the band-aid off and do it.
Do it! Just do it!
I'm going over this face with the first layer, which is kind of like priming it, so that none of that dark color is gonna show through. I'm gonna have to go over this about 3 or 4 times to make sure that that's really hidden, and I can continue to just start to build that color up. And so basically I'm going to be using a bunch of different transparent layers so that I can fade that into my original painting. The thing about acrylic paint is that it dries extremely fast, and I really like that wet on wet look. And the technical term is sfumato, where it actually blends completely seamlessly so that it looks very realistic. And the issue with acrylic paints is that they're basically just plastic suspended in a binder, and so they dry extremely fast, so it makes it really hard for you to be able to blend those colors out like you would in oil paint. And so what I'll do is I'll use this product that's called a gloss medium, where it's essentially just acrylic paint but with no pigment in it at all. And so I'll just use a hairdryer to completely dry that surface. I'll go over it with that gloss medium, and then I can start to build up the layers so that you can see that background beneath it. And basically I'm just going to do layer on layer on layer until it starts to look all seamlessly blended. And when I'm happy with how that face shape is looking, I can start to paint in my objects. So I'm not going for anything dimensional here, but I do want to start to fill in those shapes so that I can start to get an idea and start to kind of put a grid map down of where this face is going to lay. And so I'm just going to start to fill in the eyelids and start to fill in my objects here so that I can start to see where these things are going to go, and then I can start to layer over those so that I can give it more depth. Now, the real key with this painting to get the best color saturation is not to use any black. Once you start to introduce black into your paints, things start to get more muted and things can get kind of muddy. And one thing that my teachers taught me in college was that painting with black is actually one of the most laziest things that you can do because it's just kind of a shortcut. And so what I'm doing here is really starting to layer over those paints so that you can get that extremely deep and saturated color. I always say that my favorite color is black because it is all of the colors mixed together. Now in this section you can see that the face still wasn't looking like it was the right shape, even though I had added some length to the top. So I'm adding in some cheekbones to that so that it starts to look a little more compressed, and like the chin is coming forward so that that head looks like it's tilted back. And so I'm really focusing on doing a lot of shading on the chin area, because when you're using the really dark colors, you have to layer them up a lot or else it starts to add some streaks. And so I'm just trying to blend as much as possible, doing my layers with my clear coat and then doing transparent layers on top of that. And so it'll almost start to become a black. And the part that really started to transform this face and give some life for me was putting in the purple on the cheeks. This actually just meshed everything in together and added some warmth, and you'll see in the end, once I start to paint in that background, those purple accents really start to kind of complement everything on the painting and starts to bring everything together. And then I can focus in on some of those areas that might have gotten lost by doing the light color on the glazing. So basically I'm coming in with the green and doing some shadows, and this will really help to make some depth in those snakes and really start to make everything kind of mesh in together. Now the thing with painting is that it really doesn't start to come together until the way ends, so it looks crazy until you get all the details in. And so now I can start in with my very fine details here, doing the eyebrows and then shading in the eyes and the teeth. Yes, eyes and teeth are white, but you do have a gradient that happens because they are set back and they are round and flat surfaces. So basically, to make them mesh in with the background a little bit, I'm going to add the blues and the greens to really make them start to look like a part of this painting, a part of this universe. And I'll continue to glaze around the face to add in just a little bit more shadows and some highlights too, so that it kind of brings everything together. I was noticing that chin was sitting back a bit, so I'll do a bright highlight on that. And now I can go in with my eyes. So the issue with the original painting was that the eyes just didn't have a lot of depth. They weren't blended out as well as I wanted to. I really wanted that kind of glossy, milky glaze over the eyes. And so I really think that I accomplished that well here. And it takes a lot of layers and a lot of fine little details to be able to make it look realistic, and your eyes are going to be drawn to the eyes in the painting because it is the focal point, and just naturally that's where your eyes go first. And so we really want to spend a lot of time on these since it is the main subject, and it really is those fine little details that really bring everything together and start to give it that finesse and that finish. Now I'm going to start by filling in the lips here, so I have that purple base, so it's going to be a lot easier for me to come in with my transparent layers over those lips and just to create a lot of dimension. It looks a little bit crazy right now because it's so dark, but we're going to add some darkness to the eyes, and we're going to be making the background much darker, so you have your 4 dark corners and then the eyes and the lips that are the darkest part in the painting. So I did that on purpose to be able to really draw your eye to the center of that painting. And now that I'm done with the face, I have some parts on the snakes that I want to clean up. There's some missing fangs and, this one that I completely got rid of. So basically I'm just going to base that in with some white as a primer and then go over that with red so that it all meshes in with what was there before. And I'm just making sure that I have the perspective correct on these and making them kind of mesh back in with what was there before. Now I'm starting in with my background, and I had this kind of lighter purple color to start, and I realized it just wasn't the right color. I needed it to be just a little bit darker so that I could really set that background back. And so I'm going to come in with my fine little brush here and paint in every little detail. So we're going to come in and just paint our background with about 2 coats to make sure everything is nice and flat. Had to flip that painting because it's really hard being right-handed to get to the left-hand side and just fill in all those details. Now I'm going to make sure everything is dry, and I'm going to do that same technique that I did on the face with my transparent layers. And so I'm doing this because I want a radial gradient so that it looks like it's the darkest in the corners and it's fading into that lighter purple in the center to draw your eye into the center again. And so basically I'm doing this glazing because I can go over those snakes with that round kind of dark, almost black color, and then come in and wipe off where those snakes are so that everything is nice and crisp and everything looks like it's set forward. And now with that background being complete, we can call the painting portion of this project complete as well. So what I have to do next is come in and do a clear coat over the painting, because as you can see here, some of the paint is very matte and some of the paint is extremely glossy. And so what I want to do is go over that with about 3 coats of this matte medium, which is going to completely even out that finish, so that when it hits the light, it has a nice satin kind of matte finish to it, and so that nothing stands out. It'll actually kind of saturate the colors and make sure everything is a nice even tone. Now I make sure everything is dry in between coats using a hair dryer, making sure there's no dust that picked up while it's been sitting there. And so I move to a smaller brush so that I don't have any lines, and I'm just gonna do a very generous coat of this matte medium over the top of this, and then finish off with my final coat, making sure everything is very flat and everything is very, very evenly coated. I know it's a little scary at first because this product goes down kind of white and milky, but it'll dry completely clear, and Liquitex is a great product. It's not going to yellow or anything, and so this project will basically last forever.